If you have already watched the video on e-receipts, you'll find that much of the next couple of minutes are the same, and that's because the setup process is the same. I apologize for repeating here if you've already heard it, but it's here for those who are starting with this video about ePledge acknowledgements. Pledge acknowledgements, both printed and emailed, are intended to be a one-time pledge statement that is sent as part of the pledge setup process. It is simply a thank you and a confirmation of the pledge. If you wish to update your donors periodically on the status of their pledges, a better option is pledge statements. ePledge acknowledgements are part of a set of emailed statements that Denari calls e-correspondence. E-correspondence is considered an add-on module, and there is a charge for emails sent through e-correspondence. You can discuss the fee with our admin office. It requires that a credit card is on file in Denari, and the fees will be charged on a monthly basis. You can set up the credit card that you'll be using by clicking the Self-Service tab in Denari and then click on Credit Card on File. Click the Add Edit button to add your credit card information and then click Save. Fill in the billing information below and you're ready to go. You may already have a card on file, and if so, you won't need to do anything further here. The next step in the process is to set up an ePledge acknowledgement template. It is a separate template from your printed acknowledgement template, although it can look similar. Synergy staff will work with you to set up your template. It is important to remember that the ePledge acknowledgement is an emailed statement that the donor will receive in their email and may or may not print out. It is not a printed statement that will be emailed as an attachment. Since the donor is responsible to print out the email, the look of the statement will depend on their ability to print from their email program. Therefore, it is a good idea to keep the layout simple. The goal is to provide them with an acknowledgement and a thank you message. Denari determines which donors will get printed or emailed statements based on that donor's preference, and that can be selected by you internally, or the donor can make that selection through their online community account. So the next step is to set up the preferences for each donor. But first you must decide what your philosophy will be toward acknowledgements. One option is to decide that all donors with an email address will get ePledge acknowledgements, whether they state that as their preference or not. Or you could decide that all donors will get printed statements unless they tell you differently. We can set the global setting for either of those policies when you set up your template, and it can be changed later if needed. If no preference is set for a donor, Denari will default to the global setting. Let's assume now that all of your donors will get printed statements unless they tell you they want the email version. Once you know their preference, you're ready to set them up, and it's fairly simple. Go to the Donors tab, Name List Management, and select the donor's name record. From there, go to the Other Pages drop-down field and choose e-correspondence emails. If they don't already have an email address here, you can just click Add New to create a new one. I'll select the address that's already here. Fill in the email address field and choose a status. New here simply means that this email address has never been used by Denari to send an email. Once that happens, it will change to active. The last thing you need to do here is hit the Make Primary button at the top of the page. This will cause this email address to be the one that Denari uses for all e-statements. The Primary button doesn't appear here because this address is marked Primary already. Now click Save. Now we can set the preference by clicking the power bar icon on the right and selecting e-correspondence preferences that are just slightly off your screen. Select the email address in the ePledge acknowledgement field and then select the delivery method. Again, hit Save. From now on, Denari will not produce a printed statement when you run pledge acknowledgements for this donor. Running ePledge acknowledgements uses the same process as printed statements. First, you will have checked the Queue for Acknowledgement checkbox in the donor's pledge record and selected a letter there. Let's look at that. We'll go to the Name List Management again and select our name record. Then from the Other Pages drop-down, we'll choose Pledges. If there's already a pledge here, you can select it or click Add New to create a new pledge. We'll select the pledge that's already here. Typically, you will set up the pledge for the acknowledgement at the same time you're setting up the pledge, since it's intended to be a one-time acknowledgement of their pledge. Scroll down to the Acknowledgement field and check the Queue for Acknowledgement box. You'll also need to select a letter here. When you run the acknowledgements, either printed or emailed, Denari will print statements for those pledges with the box checked. It will use the letter you've selected here as the letter body portion of the statement. There's also a slight variation from this, which we'll describe in a few minutes. Once the pledges are queued for acknowledgement, you're ready to print the statements. Go to the eCorrespondence tab, and then ePledge Acknowledgements in the Admin section. Running the statements here can be done in one of two ways. Clicking the Submit Request button at the top of the page without selecting a pledge segment or entering starting and ending dates causes Denari to create a statement for every pledge with the Queue for Acknowledgement box checked. It will also then uncheck those boxes at the same time. Remember, I said earlier, the acknowledgement is intended to be a one-time statement. So now you can set up new pledges and run statements for those without having to go back and uncheck the boxes for those pledges you've already acknowledged. But you do have an alternative here. You can choose either a pledge segment or a starting and ending date range to select the pledges for statements. You can't use both, one or the other. You can then get acknowledgements for those pledges identified by your filter. With either method, once you click the Submit Request button at the top of the page, Denari does not begin sending emails. It only creates the job that will be waiting for your approval. The reason for the approval process is to give you a chance to review the statements before they're sent. To approve them, you'll go to the eCorrespondence tab, and then at the bottom of the page, you will find the jobs that are waiting for approval. Under the View column, you see the View Job link. Click the link to review the statements in that job. Once you're satisfied that the job is ready to go, you can click anywhere in that row to open the approval form. Simply enter the approval code and click Approve Job at the top of the page. The emails are now being sent and there's no going back. They can't be retrieved. So where did you get that approval code? Go to the eCorrespondence tab and eCorrespondence Control Record. In the Authorization Information section, we see the Change Authorization Code link. Click that, enter the new code or password, and click the Change Password button. You only need to do this once. It works for all of your eCorrespondence statements. Sometimes there's a problem with an email address and those emails may bounce. When that happens, you will simply get an email telling you that your email to a specific person has been returned or bounced. Sometimes, though, you may not get the bounced notification email. So how do you know when email is bounced and who are the donors? Let's click on the eCorrespondence tab again and then Smart Email Dashboard. Here you see a list of jobs that are waiting for approval. This works exactly the same way as approving these from the previous page, from the eCorrespondence page. Below that you find the Recent Jobs box. This will list jobs that have been recently sent. Let me show you a better sample page. Notice the columns Sent On, Sent, Bounces, and Resend Bounces. When there's a job listed there, you'll find a number in the field that shows you how many bounces there were from that job. Click on the link to that job to see a report showing other information about the job, and that report looks something like this. Click on the number in the bounce field to see a report showing those people or those donors who have bounced, and it looks a little bit like this. And there's more information that extends out here to the right that gives you the phone number and email addresses and those kinds of things. Of course, you can click on the numbers in the other fields of this report to see other information as well. Back in the Smart Email dashboard, you also have a send link that appears when there are bounces. Clicking that will resend that statement. Of course, depending on the original problem that caused it to bounce, it may bounce again. This concludes this video on ePledge acknowledgements. If you have any questions, please contact tech support through the support button at the top of the Denari page.